Hello everybody, how are you guys doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and today I am of course not done talking about many different ideas surrounding the concept of Nintendo and their next hardware, their next generation machine, their Switch 2, their Super Switch, their whatever that thing turns out to be. I know it's a topic that not everyone loves hearing about over and over, especially when nothing is official out there. But you guys know I've been very invested in this as a conversational piece. I think it's interesting. I have my own specific predictions. And I think we're getting to that time, as evidenced by so many conversations happening out there and the delay of Zelda and all of that stuff, that I think there are still some worthy conversations to have. The conversation I'm having today is actually in response to a question that I posed to you guys, to my audience out there, both on Twitter and on YouTube's community page, about what Nintendo may be doing there. And the responses are very interesting, and so I thought it would make a fun topic to discuss today. So the main gist of the question that I posed to you guys on both Twitter and YouTube again was via a poll. I put a poll on both of those places, and I asked you guys ultimately when you think it makes sense for Nintendo to both reveal and then release their next generation piece of hardware in whatever shape or form that takes place, including whatever name it's called or whatever family of systems that it falls under. And I asked you guys when you thought it might make sense for Nintendo to reveal and release this based on what's happening with the current Switch and their current brand and the overall strength of Nintendo as a company. Because I think that is the most interesting thing to trying to predict their overall business model and their plan for the future and what they might be doing with future hardware. A lot of that stuff does come down to what's happening with the company in the right here and now. So this was really fun to do, to put these questions out and to kind of see your guys' responses and compare them to how I feel about the whole situation. And you guys know, my own personal feeling makes me biased towards one way or another here, but it's interesting to see how your guys' answers came out, which is what I want to discuss. So basically, here's what I put out on Twitter. Do you think Nintendo should wait for Switch and software sales to die before releasing their next console, or should they release their next console while their sales, hype, and brand is still strong, essentially riding that wave into their next generation? And as you can see, 388 votes, which is quite a bit lower than I'm used to getting on Twitter, but I haven't posted a poll on Twitter in like a year probably. I usually get around 1,000, give or take, but either way, still, almost 400 votes. It's not nothing. And basically, 39.7, so we'll round to 40% of you said that they should wait for sales to die for everything that they're selling now before moving next gen. And then the other 60% of you, just over 60%, said that they should do it while sales and the brand and their hype is strong. Now moving over to the YouTube poll, you can see with 1,000 votes, which is actually also less than what I'm used to seeing on YouTube. I typically get between 2,000 and 3,000 votes, so clearly the amount of people engaging in these polls are lower than normal, but it's still a significant amount of people, I feel. And so with 1,000 votes here, the numbers are almost the same. 43% of you said that Nintendo should wait for everything to die as far as their sales and their hype, and then 57% said that they should do it while everything is still strong. So there you go. Overall, I think if we find an average, we're basically looking at 40% of you, so less than half, feel that Nintendo should wait until Switch sales and the brand starts to die, and then try to revive it, so to speak, or pick back up that positive momentum with the reveal and release of next-generation hardware. And 60% of you said they should do it while things are still strong, and like I phrased in my poll here, kind of carry that momentum and carry that wave of positivity into their next-generation reveal and release. Now, there's a couple of things worthy of note here to me. One is that even though there is a clear winner across both of these polls, it is actually much closer than I expected. I kind of thought that on either poll, or maybe both polls combined, that we would see an overwhelming majority siding one way or another. And again, while there is a clear winner between the two, it is kind of close. There's only a 20% difference, right? We're comparing 40% to 60%. That is definitely a closer race than I overall predicted. I thought we were going to be going in the range of 75 to 25% as far as that difference. And we were actually quite a bit closer overall. The second thing to note is the fact that Both polls obviously had the same result of which one everyone agreed with, and it is interesting to me, and also exciting because this is the answer I agree with, that, most of you do think that Nintendo should carry the positive momentum in sales and brand recognition into the reveal and release of that next generation system. So like I said, I'd be lying if I didn't say that I'm happy with the fact that your guys' answer, 60% of you, I should say, fall in line with my own prediction and perspective and opinion, so I'm a little bit biased in that sense that you guys, tend to agree with how I feel. And so let's talk about what this means, right? And it just comes down to what's the best way for Nintendo, who we've seen have ups and downs, really high ups and a couple of really low downs. They've also kind of rested in the middle with some of their consoles in the past as well, right? Obviously, the Switch and the Wii doing incredibly well. You've got the Wii U and the Virtual Boy doing really pretty darned bad, despite the fact that I love the Wii U. And then you've got things like the GameCube and the N64 and the Super Nintendo kind of doing in the middle. Although, to be fair, Super Nintendo was actually kind of on par with the competition at its time, so that rested more on the higher end for what the early 90s was like. But we've seen them in the highs, lows, and middle, right? And so what's the best way for Nintendo to stay strong? Coming off of a successful Switch generation, which is still going and still going strong, by the way. Great news. I personally feel that it's more important for Nintendo to maintain that momentum before revealing and releasing that new console, as opposed to waiting for it to die, as the poll says. And I could definitely see a case to be made for both, and we've seen Nintendo be both successful and unsuccessful, trying both in the past as well, so that's what makes it interesting. It's also impossible to predict the future. It's also impossible to know which answer truly is the most correct. Just because I have an opinion on what makes the most sense, and you have an opinion on what makes the most sense, no one knows who's really right or wrong. It's a very organic thing. The market is fickle. You can predict it only so far, but there's always the chance that it's going to come out of nowhere and surprise you and do something you didn't actually expect. I think one of my main reasons for feeling like it makes sense for Nintendo to carry the strong sales and hype into the next generation, as opposed to wait for things to slow down and try to revive it after the fact, is going back to the Wii U. The poor, ill-fated Wii U, which I've said so many times on my channel, especially if you go back to the Wii U years when I was covering the Wii U and gaming at the time. I love the console. It was so much better than the sales and the reception showed, and it's really unfortunate how things went. But here's the thing. That console, which was a sales failure and like their lowest selling home console of all time, was sandwiched between their two best-selling machines of all time. The Wii, over 100 million units, an absolute phenomenon, a great console for its time, did extremely well, and things were starting to slow down. I'd say for about 2 years, things were really slowing down with the Wii, and so they then released their next console, the Wii U, and yes, Nintendo did make some mistakes in marketing and all that stuff. Absolutely, I will never deny it. But it was still a very well-built console that worked well, had a unique controller, and had an amazing library of games that is indisputable, okay? That's why so many of them are releasing on the Switch and people are buying them in the millions, right? So they still released a quality-made console right after the Wii, but after Wii sales started to die, right? And when that happened, the Wii U turned out to not do so well. Now, going from the Wii U to the Switch is interesting because, you could kind of spin this, I think, either way. And I even see it either way, right? But for me, I think that we're seeing a console that never actually had really strong momentum to lose, right? Basically, the momentum was lost throughout that entire generation. So Nintendo technically only had the trajectory of up to go coming out of the Wii U, right? So they released the Switch, which was an evolved and improved version of the Wii U concept, although we did lose dual screen gameplay, which I think is an absolute travesty. But outside of that, Switch is incredible despite losing the dual screen stuff. And so they evolved the Wii U concept. They released the Switch, which felt cool, hip, and modern. They did improve their marketing, absolutely. It's a great machine. I love it to death. And that, coming off of an entire generation that was just zero momentum the entire time, they were able to come out of that and have now their best-selling home console of all time, and something that's on track to honestly maybe even become the best-selling across the entire industry. And so now we sit in the 6th year of the Switch. Again, their best-selling home console, like 115 million units. It's probably going to end somewhere between like 130 and 150. Who even knows at this point? And as you guys know, I've been predicting and expecting Nintendo to reveal and probably release their next generation console in 2023. 18 or so months from right now. I think that is the plan. Maybe I get proven wrong, and even if I'm wrong, I think the worst case scenario would still be 2024. So I see us as kind of getting into the twilight years of the Switch, even though sales are very strong and the games are selling well, and the games are honestly great as well. Like, they're doing awesome with the console. I see us coming into the twilight years. And so then we come back to the question I posed. What's the smartest thing for Nintendo to do to make sure that they don't, you know, have the high of the Wii, the low of the Wii U, the high of the Switch, and then not go back down to a low? How do we prevent the second low so that Nintendo isn't doing this kind of zigzagging up and down, right? I think the best way to come from Wii U up to Switch and then stay high coming out of the Switch is, as I've already said, and you guys know, and as you guys agree through these two polls, is to not wait for Switch interest to start to wane or to die and sales to die and Nintendo's brand to start to suffer in the minds of a lot of people, like they did with the Wii, by the way. I think they need to carry that momentum, man. And if late this year or maybe early next year or even at E3 next year, let's say summer next year, they have a trailer come out or a press release or whatever, similar to when they first revealed the Switch, and it's like, here's our new console. It's a Switch 2. It's a Switch Plus. It's a home console called the Nintendo Shmoopity-Doo. Whatever the hell they're gonna make. That will be their next-gen machine that has power and graphics and overall capability way more comparable to PS5 and Series X. If they do that around summertime and say it's gonna release in October or November of this year, which would be 2023 at that point, I think that at that point, with Switch still being so strong selling and popular to a lot of people, everyone's going to be like, hell yeah, we love Nintendo, we love the Switch, it's been a great 6 years. Now the new thing is coming out in 5 months from today. I can't wait to buy that and continue my Nintendo journey. Now, a counterpoint that I've seen from a lot of people, and I've had a lot of conversations, and I've seen a lot of people share opinions or react to my conversations about this, the counterpoint I see a lot is that would just overall hurt the Switch, and Nintendo said it was going to last for 10 years, the Switch or the Switch family, and they say the Switch is halfway through its life. And things like that basically the timing doesn't line up to them, both in their brains and also with, admittedly, I will agree, some quotes that have been going around for several years. And I don't want to dive into that because I've talked about those and kind of debunked their value in prior videos, and I don't want to retread that stuff any more than the other stuff I'm retreading already today. But to me, there's just this simple solution to this that so many of these people who feel that way continually miss or actively ignore. And it's the fact that releasing Nintendo's next generation machine does not immediately kill the Switch production and the Switch sales and interest. The Switch, as we know it today, the 2017 architecture Switch, which encompasses Switch, Switch Lite, and Switch OLED, that will almost absolutely still continue for 2 to 3 years into the life of the next console. That always happens. We're seeing that happen with Sony right now. And Sony's situation also presents a case supporting my feeling and the feeling that you guys shared in your response to my 2 polls, that you can carry the strong hype and momentum like Sony did with the PS4 into the release of a new console, the PS5, and everything is still selling great. PS5 is doing incredibly well, selling like crazy, impossible to find, while PS4 still selling. They're still making games and releasing games for PS4, many of them cross-generation. And so Sony is just killing it because their PS4 and PS5 are still selling incredibly well alongside of each other. And it's been 2 years that they've coexisted, and we know Sony will be doing the same thing in 2023 for a 3rd year in a row. So why wouldn't we think that would still happen with Nintendo for 2 to 3 years? It's just so obvious to me, and it's also baffling, and I will admit a little bit frustrating, that so many people have seemed to just ignore this in favor of arguing against the fact that Nintendo will probably go next gen in power sometime pretty soon. Now, to be fair, let's also explore the other answer here, the other end of the spectrum, okay? I want to also explore the possibility that doesn't line up with my prediction. And remember, I'm only talking predictions here. None of us know what's going to happen. None of us have a crystal ball, even though we all like to joke about it here on YouTube. I do not have one. I have strong opinions and guesses and beliefs, but I know that I could be wrong. And hopefully those of you who feel differently than me also know that you could be wrong. We're all just fans and gamers having fun talking and predicting, okay? So I'm talking confidently about my prediction, but I can still acknowledge that it may turn out to be wrong. And I will, of course, acknowledge when I am wrong if that does happen. But I do want to be fair to the other side of this discussion. So what is the benefit or the chances of Nintendo waiting for Switch sales and hype and the brand of Nintendo to start to wane or die or suffer, and then try to revive it, as I've said, with a new console? Well, they might do that because, like I said, they've done it before. It's exactly what they did with the Wii U. It's exactly what they did with, like, the GameCube going into the Wii. And when they went from GameCube to Wii, it did work out pretty well for them, right? Even though it did the opposite effect when they did it from the Wii going into the Wii U. And so they certainly could do that. There's another element that I rarely have touched on in my videos, but it absolutely is worth addressing, and plenty of people have pointed it out, and it is a good point. And there is a chip shortage that does exist right now for tech across the board. Whether you're talking about, cell phones, whether you're talking about video game consoles or PCs, whether you're talking about the chips that are found inside of vehicles nowadays and so many other things, there is a chip shortage, mostly in response to the pandemic we've all gone through the past 2.5 years. And that makes it hard for Sony and Microsoft to get their consoles on the shelves in higher numbers. And in theory, it could be affecting Nintendo with their next generation hardware that we do know they're actually working on, by the way. That is a confirmed fact. They confirmed it at an investors meeting last year. And so the chip shortage is worth noting. But at the same time, we can't forget that Nintendo is still making Switches and has Switches on shelves that people are buying, okay? And Sony and Microsoft are still getting their consoles made. Cell phones and vehicle computers and PC parts, like, yes, things might be slower, but they're still available. And if you actually look at reports, there are reports saying that throughout a lot of this year, that chip shortage will continue, but by next year, 2023, my current prediction, it should start to ease up and things will become more available, provided things don't change, okay? So things definitely could change. But as of right now, signs point to 2023 being the time when that could actually improve. And beyond that, let's say my 2023 prediction is wrong, but what if 24 would be the time that it would come out? I think it's coming before then, but let's pretend it is 24. Well, if chip shortages are going to be better in 2023, then that means that by 2024, it's going to be even better, which more lends credence to the fact that Nintendo could do it. But I personally just don't like the idea of Nintendo waiting for sales and hype and the brand strength to die or to significantly wane and then try to save things with the reveal and release of a new console. I get why that sounds appealing and attractive to a lot of people and a lot of you guys. And it's not that I want to take that away from you, because I'm acknowledging there's a chance you might be right and I might be wrong. But the reason I don't believe in that is because I think it's a foolhardy business plan. Again, Sony is an example of how carrying the momentum is actually a strong way to go about things. Nintendo's successes doing it in the past is an example of a strong way to go about doing these things. And also, I'm just going to say it, waiting for things to die and slow down means that Nintendo would be being reactive as opposed to proactive. They would be taking a let's wait and see, let's react to things dying and then try to revive things, try to resuscitate a struggling brand and struggling sales. It's obviously not impossible because they did it going from the Wii U into the Switch, but again, the Wii U never had momentum to lose in the first place. And so I just feel like that reactive approach is really dangerous. It's not impossible for them to succeed with it. I am admitting that, but I just find it to be dangerous waters, man. I don't really like the idea of them doing that. I think it's risky. I'm willing to bet Nintendo, which is a very smart, business-savvy company, and very successful, by the way, is also smart enough to know that that is a risky venture. I feel like maintaining strength in your brand is the best way to do it. Why do you think Apple reveals a new phone every year? Because it keeps their brand strong, it keeps people invested. Plenty of people buy a new freaking phone every year for some dumb reason. I don't know why, but that's what people do. And it makes Apple and companies like them billion-dollar companies. Nintendo, a billion-dollar company. And I think that they are smart enough to know that it's best to not be reactive. It's best to try to get ahead of the curve, ahead of the industry, ahead of any changes, keep your brand strong as opposed to letting it fluctuate up and down. And these are just all of the many, many reasons why it just makes sense to me for them to do it while sales and the brand is strong. And again, to wrap this up and end it here, you guys clearly agree, because of my 2 polls, 60% of you in both polls think that that is the smartest way for Nintendo to do it. And so this is how I see it. These are my thoughts. I am just one man. I am one gamer and game fan. I'm one Nintendo fan. And these are how I see it as being that fan. I definitely want to thank all of you who participated in the poll, because it did give me great conversation today and a lot of cool ideas to go off of. And obviously, you know, if you guys know me, you know that I do like talking about this because it's very interesting to see what will happen. Whether I end up right or wrong at the end of the day, that doesn't change how interesting this conversation is and how exciting it will be whenever the day comes that they show us their next generation hardware. Whether it's a Switch upgrade, that's backwards compatible, by the way. We can't forget that backwards compatibility also changes the game and allows them to release their next console whenever they want. And then that also keeps the brand strong. And so whenever that day comes, next year, 2024, 2027, 2046, whenever they do it, it's going to be an exciting day for all of us, I think. So you've heard my thoughts. You've seen how everyone voted in the polls. And so now I want to hear, do you agree with me? Do you agree with the answers to the poll? Do you have a different opinion? Do you fall somewhere in the middle? I want to hear what you guys have to say about this. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of 2 Review, and I will catch you next time on another video. Bye-bye.